Leo, let's not waste any time. Tomorrow, September 23rd, you are being asked by the divine to stay silent. Not because you're powerless, but because your silence holds more spiritual weight than any words you could speak. If you're watching this right now, there's a reason. Whether it's just hours before September 23rd or you're catching this message right on time, it's not a coincidence. You didn't land here by accident. This is a divine setup. You were meant to hear this. Tomorrow isn't just another date on the calendar. It's the autumn equinox when light and darkness meet in perfect balance. The sun leaves Virgo and enters Libra, opening an energetic gateway that affects every sign, but for you, Leo, it hits different. You're ruled by the sun itself. This shift isn't subtle for you. It's spiritual. It's personal. And here's the thing, as a Leo, you're used to being heard. You lead, you speak up, you shine. But tomorrow? The universe has a different plan for you. A holier plan. You're being called to pull back, not out of weakness, but out of divine trust. To let your stillness become your loudest prayer. Imagine this, every word you don't say tomorrow becomes a petition sent directly to heaven. You won't need to explain yourself. You won't need to fight to be understood. The spiritual realm already knows. Your only job is to step aside, stay grounded, and let the higher forces move in your favor. That's not easy, I know. Especially not for a Leo. You've likely been holding on to something, maybe resentment, maybe truth you've been dying to speak, maybe emotions that want to roar. But tomorrow isn't the time to roar. It's the time to trust. You are not losing your power by staying silent. You are redirecting it. You are handing your sword to something greater than yourself and saying, "You fight for me now." That is the highest form of surrender. And also the strongest. So I want to ask you, honestly, can you feel it? That subtle pressure in your chest, that knowing in your gut? Something is coming. Something sacred. But it can only arrive if you don't interrupt it with words born from fear, anxiety, or the need to be right. If you're still with me, then this message was always yours. Take a breath. Stay with me until the end. Because what we're about to unpack in this video could shift how you move, how you pray, how you lead your life, not just tomorrow, but long after. Before we dive deeper, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for being here, for choosing to listen, for supporting this space we're building together. Every like, every comment, every subscription brings more clarity and peace into this community. And it's what allows this message to reach the souls that truly need it. So now, Leo, I want to hear from you. Tell me below what called you here today. What moment, what feeling, what sign from the universe nudged you to click play? Don't be shy, drop a comment and confirm your presence. Let me know you're here, and that you're ready. Because trust me, you'll want to stay with me through to the very last second of this message. The universe is revealing something massive for you. And it all begins with silence. Tomorrow asks something rare of you, not your voice, but your silence. And for someone like you, Leo, who was born under a sun that never hides, this may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You're used to leading with fire. You speak with conviction, defend with courage, and often hold the light for others when theirs flickers out. But sometimes, the most powerful thing a light can do is stay still and burn quietly from within. You see, silence isn't passive. It's not avoidance. In the deeper layers of spiritual growth, silence becomes a sacred response. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally understood the difference between reaction and reverence. Silence is the soul's way of saying, I trust what I cannot yet see. This is especially important now. As the sun moves into Libra, the energy shifts toward balance. And not the kind of balance that's surface deep or polite. We're talking about a cosmic reset. The kind that makes you question your emotional reflexes and invites you to reevaluate how much energy you give away in trying to be heard, validated, or understood. With Venus forming a harmonious trine with Saturn, you're given a window brief but potential redraw your boundaries and claim your worth without having to explain yourself. But here's the thing, if you speak too soon, defend too fast, or try to fix the misunderstanding with words, you might unintentionally block the exact healing you've been praying for. Because not every door opens with noise. Some only respond to stillness. Imagine you're a sword, not just any sword, but one forged in fire, sharpened over years of experience, disappointment, and growth. A sword doesn't prove its worth by swinging at everything. It waits. It listens. And when the time is right, it moves with clarity, not emotion. That's you right now, Leo. You don't need to roar. You need to be still long enough to let what's meant for you arrive unshaken. I want to talk to the part of you that has felt misunderstood lately. The version of you that's wanted to scream into the void, to write the long message, to tell your side. I see that part of you. I've lived there too. But I've also learned that some battles are won not with argument, but with alignment. When you stay silent tomorrow, you're not backing down. You're backing God up. You're getting out of the way so something higher than justice, divine correction can happen. And it will. Not always on your timeline, but always on time. There's a verse I come back to often when the urge to react feels louder than my peace. Be still, and know that I am God. That line doesn't ask us to be passive. It asks us to be sure. Sure enough to trust that being still is not the same as being stuck. It's choosing peace over ego. And that's not weakness. That's mastery. Now, if any of this is hitting home, if you're nodding along or feeling that knot in your chest begin to loosen, I'd love for you to pause and share in the comments. Have you ever felt misunderstood, but knew deep down that silence was the better path? Tell me your story. Writing it down may be the first step in releasing it. Remember, tomorrow isn't about proving anything. It's about preparing the spiritual ground for something sacred. A miracle isn't born in noise. It's born in the quiet space you create when you stop trying to be heard and start choosing to be held. And Leo, if you can honor that silence, something beautiful is already on its way. When you decide to stay silent, especially when everything inside you is begging to speak, you're doing something far more powerful than most people realize. You're not just avoiding conflict, you're reclaiming your energy. And for Leo, who is usually the first to defend, to lead, to speak up for what's right, this kind of self-restraint doesn't come from fear. It comes from wisdom. It comes from emotional maturity. It comes from having seen how much energy you've poured into trying to explain yourself to people who were never ready to hear you in the first place. There's a strange kind of strength in silence, especially tomorrow. Astrologically, the shift into Libra opens a cosmic window for reevaluating your relationships, your self-worth, and the boundaries that either protect you or expose you. Venus in trine with Saturn offers a rare kind of clarity. It allows you to finally draw the line without having to draw blood. But here's the key: this alignment works in your favor only if you pause long enough to listen before speaking, to center before reacting. Think of this time like walking through a narrow hallway made of glass. Every word, every movement echoes louder than it should. And any sharp step or sudden voice could shatter the whole structure. But if you move slowly, intentionally, quietly, you make it to the other side intact, and with more self-respect than you had when you entered. We often confuse reacting with taking back our power, but what if real power lies in knowing when not to engage? The world teaches us to perform our pain out loud. To post it. Prove it. Defend it. But healing doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes, the loudest form of healing is choosing not to let chaos have a piece of your voice. For Leo, silence doesn't mean you're less fierce. It means you've mastered your fire. You've learned not every flame deserves your fuel. There's a kind of quiet dignity that only grows when you stop trying to be right and start allowing yourself to be at peace. It doesn't mean giving up, it means giving into a deeper kind of trust. One that says, I don't need to control this outcome. I only need to control how I show up in it. This kind of emotional discipline doesn't come easy. But it comes with rewards. When you choose silence tomorrow, you create an energetic shift that reverberates far beyond what you can see. People may not notice your restraint, but the universe does. You create space for resolution, not just reaction. You open doors for real transformation, not temporary victory. So if tomorrow someone pushes you, or misreads you, or tries to draw you into old patterns, pause. Take a deep breath. Step outside the drama. Not because you're weak, but because you're clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about where you're going. And clear about what you're no longer willing to carry. If this is resonating, take a moment to share your experience in the comments. When was the last time you chose silence over reaction? And how did it feel afterward? You don't have to give every detail, just the truth of it. That truth alone might be exactly what someone else here needs to hear. Remember, Leo, your roar will always be a part of you. But the ability to hold it in, to wait, to trust, that's your evolution. That's your growth. And maybe, just maybe, that's where your next miracle will rise from. Quietly. Unexpectedly. But fully yours. Sometimes, the biggest shifts in our finances, relationships, and emotional well-being don't come through striving, fixing, or speaking up. They come through restraint. Through a quiet discipline that whispers, I don't have to chase what's meant for me. That's the invitation tomorrow, Leo. You might be facing financial tension right now, debts weighing on your mind, bills stacking like bricks on your chest, or perhaps just a lingering feeling of lack. The natural instinct is to stress, complain, vent to someone, or even panic internally. But I want to offer you something radically different. What if your silence was the offering that shifts your reality? What if, instead of crying out about what isn't working, you gave your trust instead of your words? Silence, in this context, becomes a kind of Tythean energetic donation to the future you're building. Each time you withhold the urge to declare, I don't have enough, you're making space for the vibration of, I believe something better is on its way. This isn't magical thinking. It's energetic alignment. In astrology, what we broadcast through our language, especially during sensitive alignments like tomorrow's Sun Libra ingress and the Venus trine Saturn, becomes amplified in the collective field. Words shape timelines. And silence? Silence gives space for grace to move in without restriction. Now, let's talk about love. For some of you, there's a relationship in your life that feels fractured. Maybe you've tried everything to explain yourself, to be heard, to make them see your side. And maybe nothing changed. But tomorrow, try this: let go. Not of the person but of the need to force understanding. There's something sacred that happens when you stop demanding to be understood. People begin to feel you instead of just hearing you. And in that silent space, something magical begins to unfold. The right hearts tune in when the noise fades. This doesn't mean you tolerate mistreatment or avoid healthy communication forever. But for this one moment, September 23, your greatest gift to the connection you care about is peace. A pause. A lack of pressure. Let the other person wonder. Let them feel your absence. Let the silence speak on your behalf. Now, emotionally, I want to invite you to protect your nervous system tomorrow. Stress doesn't just show up in our words, it shows up in our bodies, in our digestion, in our sleep. Start tonight if you can. Chamomile tea, screen-free hours before bed, soft music, even just 5 minutes of stillness without input. These small shifts help you descend into deeper energetic layers where real healing takes place. Don't underestimate how powerful it is to simply not react. Sometimes, when we quiet our environment, we hear what our body and spirit have been trying to say all along. Leo, you don't have to strive for this miracle. You just have to stop interrupting it with anxiety, noise, or fear. Let the miracle arrive quietly, exactly the way it was designed to. And if something inside you is nodding along, if there's a part of you that says, yes, I want that kind of peace, then take a moment to seal your intention. Comment the words, "I agree," below this video. Let it be a silent declaration to the universe that you're ready to receive without resistance. Remember, the silence you hold today is the sound your future has been waiting for. Trust it. Nurture it. Let it bloom. There's something powerful that happens when you stop participating in cycles that were never yours to begin with. You know what I mean, the arguments that sound eerily familiar, the financial patterns that repeat generation after generation, the emotional reactions that feel too heavy for one lifetime. This is the invisible language of energetic inheritance, and whether you've named it or not, you've likely felt it. Tomorrow, when you choose silence, you're not just refusing to engage in dramaerie, cutting the thread that ties you to an old story. Curses don't always look like dark rituals or spoken spells. Sometimes they're simply patterns passed down unchallenged. A belief that says you always have to defend yourself. A response that flares up every time someone questions your worth. A story that says you're never quite enough unless you prove it. Those aren't random. They're echoes. And silence, when used intentionally, becomes the sound that ends them. Energetically, your silence is not empty. It's charged. It's vibrating with the intent to not continue what has been unconsciously continued. When you feel the urge to lash back, explain, or fix someone's perception of you but you pause instead, that's you stepping out of karmic repetition and into spiritual authorship. That moment becomes a turning point. It breaks the echo. It reclaims your energy. And even more than that, it can heal backwards, not just forwards. This is what we call ancestral clearing. Some call it epigenetic reset. Some simply say, "This ends with me." But whatever words you give it, the feeling is the same. Your body knows this isn't just about you. Maybe you've seen it in your mother's sadness, or your father's anger, or the way love has felt like a battlefield in every generation before yours. But now, here you are, standing at the edge of that pattern. And tomorrow, when you stay silent not out of fear, but out of sacred awareness, you choose not to feed the fire. You choose peace as protest. And if we look to the tarot for guidance, 2 cards rise from the deck with divine clarity. The High Priestess, silent, still, surrounded by mystery and divine knowing. She teaches us that wisdom isn't always loud. That stillness is often the language Spirit speaks. And then there's Judgment, not as punishment, but as awakening. This card doesn't scream, it calls. It marks the moment when the soul hears the higher truth and rises from the sleep of old stories. These 2 archetypes don't ask you to fight. They invite you to remember who you are beyond reaction. This is what tomorrow offers you, Leo. Not a battle. Not a breakdown. A breakthrough. And not just for you, for those who came before, who never had the chance to speak from a place of strength. You're giving them a voice by choosing silence. You're offering them peace through your restraint. You're building a bridge between their unprocessed pain and your sacred power. That is no small thing. So if something in you has ever whispered, "I'm tired of carrying what doesn't belong to me," or "I feel like I've been reliving someone else's unresolved story," then let this be the moment you draw the line. Let this be the day the pattern ends. And if that resonates with you, if that feels like your truth, then I invite you to write it in the comments. The cycle ends with me. Say it not for the algorithm, but for the energy. Let it be seen, let it be felt, let it be sealed. You are not cursed. You are the cure. And tomorrow, your silence will echo louder than any noise that has come before. You might not realize how often you've been carrying energy that was never truly yours. The need to explain yourself constantly? Maybe that started with a grandparent who was never heard. The fear of being judged unfairly? That could be an echo of someone in your lineage who lived their entire life misunderstood. These aren't just ideas passed down through emotional frequencies embedded in the nervous system, looping until someone strong enough decides to pause and say, "It ends here." Tomorrow, when you choose to remain silent, especially when your instinct tells you to defend or correct, you're doing something that takes far more strength than speaking ever could. You are interrupting a loop. You're taking the momentum of generations and gently turning it in a new direction. It doesn't require fireworks. It doesn't need anyone to clap. But in the field of energy where things are felt before their seigneury, creating shockwaves of healing, there's an invisible power in not reacting. People often misunderstand silence as passive, but in energy work, silence is one of the most active frequencies there is. It absorbs. It reflects. It dissolves. And it creates space for something entirely new to be born. When you choose not to react tomorrow, you're not suppressing yourself. You're sanctifying your space. You're clearing out the noise so that only truth remains. Not the surface truth of what was said or done, but the deeper truth of who you've become, of what you will no longer tolerate, and what you're quietly protecting within yourself. Because make no mistake, silence is not submission. Silence is protection. And sometimes, silence is the most courageous way to love yourself. I know this is hard, Leo. You feel things deeply, and injustice is something you notice immediately. You don't just feel your own emotions, you pick up on what others won't even admit to themselves. And when people misread you or accuse you or challenge you unfairly, it can feel like fire rising in your throat. But that fire isn't always meant to be used. Sometimes it's meant to be stored, held, waited on. That fire, when kept sacred, becomes light later on. Silence tomorrow may not change everything in one day, but it will mark a turning point. A vibrational shift. You'll begin to feel it not just emotionally, but physically. Your sleep may deepen. Your digestion may ease. A headache you've had for weeks might quietly fade. That's the body's way of saying, thank you for not leaking energy into battles that aren't worthy of your spirit. And yes, people might notice. They may wonder why you're not reacting the way you used to. They might push harder to get a response. But that's only because your stillness is speaking louder than they're ready to hear. Keep holding your ground. Not out of spite but out of sovereignty. You're not the same person you were when this cycle began. You've outgrown the story. You've done the emotional labor. You've studied the patterns. And tomorrow, your silence becomes your graduation. You're quiet, I'm done. So take a moment now and reflect. What are you no longer willing to pass on to the next generation? What pain have you been carrying for someone else long before you had words to name it? If you feel the resonance of that question in your heart, let it settle. And if you're ready to release it, speak it silently, or even better, write it. Comment, "The cycle ends with me," as a signal to your soul and to others who are walking the same journey. Because that's what tomorrow really is, a breaking of chains that no one else saw. But you felt. And by choosing silence, you're not giving up. You're setting something free. So now, we arrive at the edge of it all. One final pause before the energy shifts. One last breath before the world begins to look different, because you will be different. Tomorrow, September 23rd, is not just another day marked by a date. It's a sacred checkpoint in your personal evolution. A divine moment made just for you. And there is only one instruction: stay silent. You don't need to fight for your place anymore. You don't need to chase closure or clarity. You don't have to be louder to be seen. You don't have to explain what your spirit already knows to be true. The moment you stop trying to control everything around you is the moment you finally gain control within. When you choose not to react, not to correct, not to prove, you step into the most powerful role of all, the one who knows, and needs nothing more. The most beautiful part is that this silence doesn't mean emptiness. It doesn't mean isolation. It means power that's so intact, so deeply rooted, it no longer needs to perform. It means trusting the process instead of rushing it. And Leo, you more than anyone know how to burn bright. But this time, you're being asked to shine inwardly. Quietly. Unshakably. I hope that tomorrow you walk into the 23rd with the awareness of someone who has nothing left to chase, only things left to receive. May you wake up not with tension in your chest, but with stillness in your breath. May you feel the shift, not through noise, but in the silence between thoughts. Because often, that's where the magic really lives. If you've been waiting for a sign, for something to finally break through, all I can say is, trust that this is it. But don't expect it to come through shouting. It will come softly, like a door unlocking from the inside. And if you're still enough, you'll hear it turn. So I leave you now with a few blessings to carry. If numbers resonate with you, hold on to 7, 23, and 41 anchors of divine timing, inner trust, and new foundations. And if colors help you feel balanced, surround yourself with sapphire blue, milky white, or soft lavender shades that hold the frequency of calm, grace, and sacred protection. And now, I turn it over to you. Have you ever felt that your silence said more than your words ever could? Have you noticed how peace arrives not when the world agrees with you, but when you agree to stop fighting it? I'd love to hear what part of this message moved you. Share it below. Comment 777 to affirm that you're ready to stop striving, to start receiving, and to let your stillness be your strength. Thank you for being here. For watching. For showing up not just for this video, but for yourself. Your presence, your energy, your journey, it matters more than you know. And every like, every comment, every subscription helps bring more light to this growing community of seekers, healers, and soul-led explorers. So if you found comfort, insight, or strength here today, don't leave without letting it echo back. Subscribe, like, and stay connected to eternal mindfulness, where healing meets truth, and your light always has a place to rise.